minutes or whatever, and then get back in here, because I know she has lots of material. Goodbye.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Karen Scheidt, and I spoke to this group in the fall of '99 when the Star Child project first came out. I'm coming to you from a very different angle, I suppose, than what you're used to. Not from a MUFON or a UFO, but from an archaeological and paleontology. It's archaeology and paleontology put together, my areas of expertise. And also, I found I have another Egyptologist in the group. My area of specialty in Egypt is 18th dynasty Egypt. But I'm also into Mesoamerica, big time. The pyramid cults have always drawn me to them. And at 8, I was already deciphering hieroglyphics, not hieroglyphics, but hieratic, which is a written form of Egyptian per se. They didn't have just picture writing, they actually had a form of writing as well. So I've been into this for a long time. Page a minute, the truth. What brought me into this realm was the Star Child. Is there anybody here that's familiar with the Star Child project at all? Okay, a couple people. What happened was back in '99, and I'm going to pop back and forth in time a little bit. I had turned on the Kathy Fountain show on TV, and here was Lloyd Pye. I was hoping that David and Colette Summers would be here.
I didn't contact them, I apologize.
Okay. And on the Kathy Fountain show was two men. One was by the name of Lloyd Pye, the other was David Summers. At the time, David Summers owned the magazines in Australia, and he was following the story. And Lloyd brought a skull, actual real skull, not a cast of it or whatever, onto the show. And I wasn't paying much attention. I was doodling back and forth through the house. And I heard them say where the skull came from and why it was different. And I thought, And I came out and I looked and I almost fell on the floor. And he said it was the only skull that they knew of like this. He talked about the skull, and they didn't know what it was. His angle, Lloyd is a paranormal researcher and a writer. You may have read some of his books. And he explained where the skull had come from, the history behind it, and what they were trying to prove. And that they thought possibly that this was a skull from a cross between a human being and some form of alien. And I thought, because again, remember, I'm coming from a very different area at this time. I'm coming from a very scientific, rigid area. But what stopped me dead is that this wasn't the only skull out there. I had 2 others. And he didn't know it at the time. And it got involved, and there were people calling into the show, and some of them seemed to be wacky, and some of them seemed to be straight. And I got on the horn really quick, and I ended up with this producer, and I said, look, I'm not going to call in and say little green people came down my chimney. I said, and I told him who I was, what I did, and that there were more of these skulls out there, and was it possible to talk to this man? And it took off from there. They said, what? And I gave it to them in very scientific terms, and they realized, whoa. And she said, please hang on the line. And as soon as the show was over, Lloyd came on the line, and we got talking. And he was doing a presentation with the skull the next day on this side of the bay, and asked if I could bring what I had with me. He had a little question in his voice at the time, because he didn't know who I was, and I could have been just some wacko from somewhere. And I said I would be delighted to, and went over the next day and met him, and it took off. And we've been working on the project ever since. And it has expanded my horizons, I'll put it that way to you, because I'm coming from a totally different area than where you're evidently coming from. The more we learn, the more questions are out there. I can tie together, and trust me on this, that what I'm going to present today does not deface what you believe or are questioning at all. In fact, it adds to what you believe. And I'm going to take it back through history and bring it up with hard proof. Not just, oh, well, this saw and some crazy little green thing ran across the field. No. This is a very hard evidence proof. And I'm going to take you from a different angle, and I'm going to take you back through time now. And I'm going to give you a timeline, because I have found, and I'm going to give it to you in plain English. I'm not going to come off with these off-the-wall terms and all this other business. It's just straight English. Most people are aware of the Egyptian civilization. And I'm going to Everybody here familiar with Egypt and ancient Egypt and what goes on? Most people familiar with the pyramids and different dynasties, and Akhenaten, the first pharaoh that broke with, there aren't a whole bunch of gods, there's just one, and it's Aten, and he cleaned out all the priests and what they did to him, the whole schmear. That'll give you a little bit of an idea, and I'm going to take you to different places around the world of what was going on at the time that my things started happening and Lloyd's things were happening. Because my things are in Mesoamerica, we're talking Mexico, Chiapas into the jungles. Lloyd's skull came out of Chihuahua, Mexico, which is sort of north central Mexico, closer to the United States boundaries. Okay? Mine are in Cholula, which is, if you went down, if this were Mexico, and there's a picture of it right over here. It's sort of small, you can come up and see it later. Mexico, and then the Yucatan area, and you think of Mexico City, boom, up here. Well, Cholula sits right about there. And a lot of the places that you've heard of, like Palenque, Don Donovan's Chariot of the Gods, Bonaparte and Yachilan, which I'm going to hit on big time, and the Lacandones Indians, all fall in an area very similar, right down between the border of Chiapas and Guatemala. Think of Mexico, think of the United States, but we've got different states within the United States. And Mexico is broken up pretty much the same way. They've got, this is the area of this is the area of that. But we're talking with the area basically that runs right down in here, between Guatemala and Chiapas, the border, the area of Mexico known as Chiapas. If we drop back in time, can you hear me without the?
Yeah.
Okay. If we drop back in time to, say, 18th dynasty Egypt, and we're talking in time, everybody's heard of King Tut, and his golden everythings and the whole stuff that was going on. Tut was about 1362 to 1352 BC. Okay, so you're going to put him in there. 18th dynasty basically ran from about 1500 to 1550 BC. And if you want to go up to the pre-Ramesses, Ramses the Great, the pharaoh supposedly of the flood, okay, you're going to bring him up in time to, I'd say 1304 to 1237 BC. As you start back here, the dates start getting less until you hit like 0. And then you hit AD, and you start building up 1, 2, 3, 4, to where we are now, 2003, 2004, wherever it is. So you've got a funny little thing doing with numbers if you're not familiar with that. The 18th dynasty, and the reason I'm getting into this is I'm going to tie it into another group of people in Mesoamerica. This whole thing is the flying gods. In classic Mesoamerica, the dates classically are 200 to 900 AD. Okay? 200 to 900 AD. Pretty far back. Not far back as, say, 13-something BC, but close, but they all start tying together. When you find these pyramid cults, and they're all over the world, most people think of pyramids are only in Egypt, or maybe Mexico, maybe South America. There are pyramids in China, there are pyramids in the Pacific. Slightly different in some forms. So there's mastabas, the ones that, the step pyramids and the true pyramids and the whole bit, but they all tie together. And the neat thing about them is that every last pyramid group that you can find in the world, if you go from the archaeological standpoint, every last flippin' one of them was brought about because of gods that came from the sky. The flying god. The flying gods had different names in different cultures. In Egypt, you had Thoth. In Mexico, you had the ones that you'd be familiar with, the Quetzalcoatl, or Cuculcán, the feathered serpent. About the time that this giant eagle flew down and opened his beak, and 4 beings came out that weren't from around here. Strange. When you start coming from my standpoint, it's like, what was that? Well, it goes way back. I mean, the Greeks had gods of Machinon, which meant gods and machines from the sky. And there are recorded histories in our Bible, if you are, say, a Christian, about the war in heaven, with the angels fighting with Lucifer. Lucifer was the right hand of God, and he was the morning star, but he basically had an insurrection, and there was this horrendous fight and everything, and then some got stuck here, and some got taken off, and the whole schmear. These legends permeate all around the world, and they're in the written and the glyph and the oral tradition. Some countries, and if you go way back, don't have a true form of writing. but their oral tradition is passed down just boom, 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 exact. If you saw the one book, there was a movie about way into the future where people ran around, each person was a different book, and they would teach that book to the next person because books had been outlawed and burned. It was sort of that way. Yeah, Fahrenheit, exactly. And it was a very similar thing, and the people that were entrusted to the stories had a very specific job. It wasn't just Joe Schmo repeating a story. He had that honor and that privilege and that duty to do this. Fine. Well, we drop back in time, and now we're going to go back a ways. We're going to go back to like 18th dynasty Egypt. And there, some really unusual, strange things were occurring as far as we would think of them now. 18th dynasty, to me, has always been extremely fascinating because of the people that were there and what they did and what occurred. You would be able to home in on it because of Tut, the boy king. And you would think of, oh, Nefertiti, and everybody is seeing, the bust because of Akhenaten and the different people there. But there were other things going on at that time, too. There was the first female pharaoh by the name of Hatshepsut, who literally ran Egypt. And she ran it until her half-brother, Thutmose, was able to come to the throne. But she ran it better than any man. And she also wore the false beard. Now, there's an interesting thing about Hatshepsut. She disappears. She builds one of the most amazing funerary complexes that the world has ever seen. If you've seen any pictures from the Valley of the Kings or whatever, you see this amazing building built in the face of a cliff or a rock with the big stairway coming down. But they've never found her. Where did she go? She built this giant, massive thing. Where is she? Where's the rest of her family? Nothing. Her brother shows up. Other people show up. Where the devil does she come from? She also claimed the throne by doing two things. One, saying that she was a descendant of the gods and carried the goddess bloodline, and it could be proven, and that she had her father's okay. Pharaoh also was supposed to carry the blood of the gods, which was an interesting, intriguing thing. The thing that I find intriguing about her is that they were also people. They weren't just legends. When you get so far back in time, you don't think of them as happening. I mean, right now we can talk about Abraham Lincoln being assassinated, but who cares? Well, I'm sorry it happened. It was sort of terrible. Who did something? Who cares? But if I were to ask the people in the room, where were you when John Kennedy was assassinated? I think almost everybody in this room would be able to say, oh, gee, I was, because they were living at the time and it meant something to them. So the farther you go back in time, the harder it is to really grab a hold of. And if you know what was really going on in the world at the time and what the people were like, you get a much better handle on it. This little illustration is Senwa with the Princess Neferu. Hatshepsut, the queen that I'm talking about, that ran as pharaoh in Egypt and did it for quite a while. And she was 18th dynasty. She began in about the 15th century. This Senwa was the tutor of Neferu, the princess. He trained her and educated her and took care of her. This little head popping out of this square stone is Hatshepsut's daughter. Everything that we can lay our hands on from back then, and my theory is too, is that Senwa is Neferu's father. The father wasn't fathered by her brother. He was way too young at the time. And when you read the glyphs and the whole schmear about it, you see how he's emerging out of the same stone? In 18th dynasty, this square form started coming out. And it always meant that these were interlocked and genetically interlocked. So we've got a little thing going on over here. Here's Senwa, the tutor, being the father of Neferu. So he was sexually active with Hatshepsut and her lover and the love of her life. And then what happened to him? And where did Neferu go? Strange questions. They'll be brought up later. It ties into a later thing. Then you've heard, if we drop up ahead of time, still 18th dynasty. And this runs from about 1379 BC to 1362. You're familiar with Akhenaten? Amenhotep IV. He was the heretic pharaoh. He was the pharaoh who said, forget all the rest of the gods. They don't exist. There's only one, which is Aten. sun god with the rays coming down. He did a horrendous thing. It's no wonder they knocked him off. The other power that was in Egypt at the time were the priests. The priests of Ra, the priests of every god had a temple or multi-temples and priests, and those priests were powerful. This guy has the nerve to come in and say, that's it, closing all the temples, you're out of a job, go do something else. Holy, this was not to be. He decided that's it. He took his family and everything else and moved to a place that we know as Tel El Amarna. Set up his own city. He was very peaceful. His sister, Bakatana, was vicious as they come. I mean, she should have really been Pharaoh. She was the masculine or whatever. But the neat thing about Akhenaten is that he did something, he broke not only with religion, but he broke with the stylizing of art. He had his people, his family, and everyday things depicted as they actually were. You're familiar with the very stylized Egyptian thing, I'm the pharaoh and I'm. He didn't do that. And you're finding this form, and there's a lot of discussion about him. Why? Why was he shaped like he was? And what is going on with him? He looked sort of feminine. He had a hot belly. What? But then he's got the wife, Nefertiti, that everybody's very familiar with, and everybody's familiar with her bust and all of the children. Why? And why did they have the elongated heads? What was going on here? But remember the shape of his face as we creep up in time. And again, he's 18th dynasty. And again, back in time. Now we're going to creep up in time. This is on the other side of the world, and this is Egypt. We're coming into Mesoamerica. Think of Mexico, Central America, South America. Actually, it pushes the borders because our Indian tribes, that we know as Native Americans in our West, interacted with the group that I'm going to be talking about. There is a timeline in this book, if you're interested when you come up to look, the one that has the pictures in it, and it pops back over here so you can get a better timeline of what was going on in the rest of the world. And you can sort of compare it. Oh, okay, that was going on at this time? Son of a gun. It'll be an interesting thing for you to see. But where I'm concentrating is from 200 to 900 AD, which is the classic period of the Maya or Mesoamerica. And I can bring it up as far as 1100 AD. All right? Back then, as you're well aware, they didn't have, grab a cell phone and say, hey, Ralph, what are you doing in Egypt? It didn't happen. Most people weren't even aware that other civilizations existed. Some people had ideas. Some people go to Columbus. You're going to sail off the end of the world and fall on your head. What's going on? This is crazy. There's dragons that live out there. You'll sail beyond the sunset and they'll eat you. So you really didn't have a lot of communication going around worldwide. But when you get into archaeology, you're beginning to find out there was contact. And where the heck did it come from? Now with DNA, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, it's starting to bring the picture closer together. You're taking different puzzle parts, and you're able to build more picture. You know what's going on. Well, Lloyd Pye comes up with the star child. And get Michael's picture. Michael was very nice enough to download some things off the Star Child project site for me that I didn't have time to do. I will tell you the story about the Star Child, but before I do, let me tell you the legends. In Mesoamerica, legends and stories and their history came down in three ways. One, there were glyph writings, okay? Things that were cut into stone, basically. And you probably know their number systems. A bar was 5, a dot was 1, there were symbols. But it took it more because the color could change something. If you speak Vietnamese, there's somebody in here that happens to speak Vietnamese, the word ba, means three different things. You need white, mountain, or something else. Well, color, painted, could change the whole meaning of something. So keep that in mind while we go through this. They had a form of writing. They definitely did, and they were called codices. And they were on a handmade paper. Are you familiar with the Egyptian paper? Papyrus or papyrus, however you put it in. They made their own paper. Well, the people in Mesoamerica did the same thing. But instead of rolling it up in a scroll, it was folded back and forth. As a kid, you probably made, those little accordion things and you could bend them all out and bring them together. That's how theirs were done. And they were done by scribes, highly trained priests, very educated people for their times. And it was sort of like the library in Alexandria. The main centers kept libraries of these records. It was very important. Then there was the oral tradition. And the oral tradition was as important as the written or the glyph. Because if you tied all three of them together and they all said the same thing, you were pretty much right on. There's slight differences, but you bring all three together and bingo, you've got it. Okay. Lloyd starts out, the Star Child, which, I'll see if I have one of the other ones here. There's pictures up here and you can come and play with them. I'll do this, I don't know if you can see it first. And if you have a computer, you can get to the internet. It's the starchildproject.com. That's it, and all of this will come up. This little funny person is the Star Child. This is a normal human skull, the skull that was found with the Star Child. And I will show you bigger pictures and stuff as we go on. It seems that in Chihuahua, Mexico, in a silver mine, an American, and then there's a whole story, I'll have it up here if you want to go over and read about it. We drop back in time, and a family of Mexican heritage who were American went back to visit the relatives. And I'm giving it to you sort of as easy form. And the kids that were down there, they had teenagers who came with them, were also told that there were silver mines in Chihuahua, because Mexico is known for its silver. And they were also told, don't you dare go near those silver mines. They're dangerous, you're not to go in them, they're boarded up, and stay away or you're going to be in deep doo-doo. Well, being kids, what do you think they did? Right into the mines. And the teenage girl that went in was the first one to find, quote, quote, the Star Child and the Keeper. She was way back far into a mine, and what she stumbled upon, and I'm going to give it to you briefly because there are full explanations of the Star Child here, is that she found like a hand coming up, sort of out of the soil, and what looked like possibly bodies. Now, it didn't freak her out that much, because she started messing around with it and digging it and seeing what was going on. What was found there was what they call the Star Child, this little being, a very strange head. And holding onto the Star Child was a skeleton, what looked like a normal-sized human being. One looked like a child, one looked like an adult, that was holding on to the Star Child. And well, the kids were fascinated with this. This was just amazing. And so she went and got the others, and they were all in on it. And they actually collected the heads. I wish they had gotten more. They had collected the head of the Star Child and the head of the caretaker. It was recorded. They smuggled it out. The one family that had the kid, the Star Child, kept quiet about it, because if you try to bring, even now, an artifact across the border and you're caught with it, you are in deep doo-doo. Especially if you're on the Mexican side. You're in jail, and forget the consulate, forget the embassy, you rot. Just that simple. But they were able to bring the Star Child out, and the other stuff. They had it all documented. They brought it up here. What the little girl that, the teenager that found it, passed it on to another family relative. The person that it came to realized that they had something that was unlike anything that they had ever seen. And it wasn't a pumpkin head, which you may be familiar with. It wasn't one of these elongated things. It wasn't cradle boarding. They didn't know what they had, but they knew it needed to go to somebody professional to find out. Well, eventually it came to Lloyd Pye. And the Star Child Project was born, and they were trying to find out what in the heck they had. Now, the legends that go back to the Star Child are very similar to the legends I'm going to tell you about the gods of Cholula, and this can tie in with what you're doing. The legends all tend to say, and with the Star Child and the gods of Cholula, that at any given time, the gods, the flying gods, the gods from the sky, the gods that come down and teach them architecture, math, astronomy based on Venus, all kinds of things, medicine, these good gods will come down, and if you are very fortunate, and if your village is extremely fortunate, they will pick a young lady from the village that young lady will have the honor of basically mating with a god. And if a child results from this, the Indian mother will carry the child to term. Then the entire village is charged with the care of this child. This is a godchild. And this comes down in written form, codices, oral, all the way down. And this child usually will stay with the village, honored, taught, until the child is somewhere between 5 and 7, whereupon the gods will return and take the child back with them. Now, woe unto the village if something were to happen to this child. Now, again, I'm coming from an archaeological standpoint. I'm not coming from your standpoint. I'm telling you as it comes down. You do something to that kid, and you're wiped off the face of the earth. Not just the person that was put in charge. Not the priest or the priestess that's supposed to take care of this child and educate this child. But the whole flippin' place is level. And if the whole place isn't level, the people disappear. The town or the city is left behind, but the people are gone. What is this? Come from it from my standpoint of view. Who the heck could do this? You know, we've heard, oh, well, there's Vikings, and they come over in Viking ships. Well, I can't imagine a Viking coming over, impregnating some Mesoamerican, saying, I'll be back in 5 years, heading off, going somewhere else, and coming back. It's possible, but highly unlikely given the time, the hurricanes, the ship, and the whole bit. It would take far longer than that. Also, the gods are described as something other than a Viking. Vikings could make it over there. I have no problem with a Viking landing in Mesoamerica. I have no problem with someone from Ireland and St. Brendan and those legends coming and exhibiting in. No problem at all. But that's not the legends of these guys. These are totally different. So here Lloyd has this skull. And he's like, what is this? There's only 2 of you that are familiar with the Star Child. They start doing research on the Star Child. And they find out, whoa, we've got an entirely new type of hominid. And what that means is you've got another form of human being. It's as much different from, you know, what Neanderthal man is with the big, you know, brow ridges, sort of the AP guy with the long arms, to the Cro-Magnon, what we think of as modern man. There's a big jump between Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon as there is between the Star Child and us, except for he has a far greater brain capacity than we do right now. He has jumped 200 cubic centimeters of brain matter more than we do. That's for openers. Number 2, when you pick up the skull, and I have played with this, it is half the weight of our skull. It is bigger. It is shaped differently. I will pass these around so you can see these and play with these. The Star Child is a very rounded head. If I were to hold this up, and you can see normal skull, Star Child skull, you can begin to see what's going on. But it gets nutsier. The more you know about the structure of this skull, the crazier it gets. If you're a very scientific-minded human being. And God forbid you're a forensic pathologist, because you've been taught a very specific way. This skull is half the thickness of ours. Weighs half the amount, but stronger by 10 times than ours for openers. The orbits, the eye sockets, in fact, there's a forensic drawing, a pathologist drawing of what this person might look like when they start. Have you ever seen the forensics drawings of the scale model? They take the skull and they build it up to see what this is going to look like. The eyeballs, the eye sockets, not like ours. And the eyes, to put it mildly, hook to the brain a very different way. They hook down here, not where ours do. There is nothing about the Star Child that is anything like anything on the face of the earth that they had ever come up with. It doesn't have sinus cavities. You know how you ever get a sinus headache and think, oh, geez, Louise. This guy wasn't bothered with it. Didn't happen. Everything about this creature is not like we are. It is not a pumpkin head. It is not hydrocephalic. It is not cradle boarded. It is not, what cradle boarding is, where you smash, because from Yachilan, which we're going to get into in a little bit, the heads are slanted back because they wanted to look like the gods as much as they could. But they smashed boards on their heads and then they hung things down so the kids were cross-eyed, because a cross-eyed virgin is what you threw in the well. Not my idea of fun, but it gets crazier and crazier. The teeth are not our teeth. And then the gods of Cholula, I'll get into this. Unfortunately, the Star Child didn't really have dentation teeth, so we couldn't pull the nuclear DNA from it. But nothing was right. The jaw, the word hooked, is not our jaw. It doesn't hook the same way. There isn't anything about this little being that's us. And everybody was going nuts. What is this? Who is it? And the more you learn, the crazier it got. The more rigid science got nutsy. Doctors, forensic pathologists didn't want to touch it because they were like, oh, I can prove that, so that's not what I thought it was. What the heck is this? And if you're familiar with the medical community or scientific community, when you go out on a limb and put yourself out there, you can get hammered. And if you spend $1 bazillion going through med school, establishing your reputation, and I'm the head, neurosurgeon for all of, wherever, and I say, I don't know what this is either, I can lose my reputation if I'm down the line. Well, a lot of very brave people, in my opinion, highly intelligent, extremely trained, got in on this thing. The Star Child project has not been bastardized, which means it's been done on total donation and private funding. A lot of major corporations, a lot of major companies, a lot of big, powerful people wanted to put money in so they could control it, and it wasn't done. It's been kept pure, so that no one could say, IBM came in and, It got stranger and stranger. The neat thing about the Star Child is that,
Do we have an approximate age for this?
classic, 200 to 900.
No, the age of the child.
The age of the child.
Oh, yes, I'll get into that in a minute,
Uh-oh.
because it's gotten stranger. I talked to Loyd this morning, he's in Medellin, Louisiana, and they've been we've had DNAs, we had mitochondrial DNAs, we had all this other stuff come up, and there's been a big shift in the last couple of days. It gets even spookier. What time period it came from? Yeah. How old is the kid? Whole nother bag. Whole nother bag. This little person, okay, just like my gods of Cholula, their head doesn't fit on their neck like ours do. If I were to pull my hair back and turn to the side, this is pretty much like everybody's head and neck, unless you've been injured or, there's something going on. Your neck fits this way. You can do this and this and this and this. Not this one. This one's head fits this way. Okay? It doesn't fit on a neck. Their neck is not our neck. Whatever this is, the head doesn't fit on the neck like ours. It fits in this position. And if you've got eye orbits and sockets the size that this does, it still works. Okay? I'm down this way, but I can look up this way. But if you double the size of my eyes, no problem. The mouth is very small. The nose is vestigial. The ears, my ears are up here. Most people's ears are up here. I've got degrees in art as well. And usually your ears are where your eyebrows are down to here. Sounds nuts, but that's exactly what it is. Their little ear openings, as we would think of them, are down here. Okay? When you come up and look at this, it gets stranger and stranger. The more you find out, the crazier it gets. The head is shaped ovally. See the shape of this drawing that the forensic person did? The narrow chin. Think of this chin. When I got into this, didn't know a flippin' thing about what you would call grays. I guess you would call them grays. The little gray people with those strange things and the huge eyes. I had no idea. Okay? Yeah, there you go. Had no idea whatsoever. But the shape starts echoing what your group would say are this way. They've got the skull. There it is. Now with the Star Child project, it gets wilder and wilder. And when you look on this, you're going to see the other thing. Not only does the skull, here's the Star Child, normal skull that was found with it. Star Child. When you look at it, the skull slants. It doesn't round like ours does. It goes straight up. But it wasn't cradle boarded. When you look at, think of sutures. You know how the skull comes together in the sutures? Totally normal the way it was supposed to be. It wasn't mashed, it wasn't mangled, it wasn't hydrocephalic, it wasn't a pumpkin head, it wasn't any of the other things that we know that cause strange head shapes. This is the way this little sucker is supposed to be. More questions? Okay. When you look at this drawing of it also, you're going to find other strange things going on. There's interior shots. Not us at all. What have we got? Don't know. Okay, now we get a little nuttier. This is, in fact, is that the hybrid maxilla, like the teeth? We normally on molars would have so many roots, 4 roots or whatever, and 1 root with these teeth. They don't. Totally different. What are they? Different number. Why? Don't know. Strange. Here comes the Star Child. I don't know if you can see it from back here. Down here are 4 basic, normal structural human skulls. And sitting perched in between them is this big, fat, round-looking strange thing, which is the Star Child. Not like us. What is it? Don't know. And you'll be able to see how it's all put together in this straight slant. This straight line in the back is highly important. There are sites on the internet that you can go to. That Connolly's got one with these strange skulls with these big beanie things and all kinds of stuff. Not like this. This is totally different. Now we get really crazy. Money was raised. Lloyd Pye put out 50 grand of his own money in the hole to try to find out what the heck this thing is. And they started running DNA tests. And they went to Europe. And they started pulling DNA there. Now there's 2 types of DNA. People are getting familiar with the term DNA now because of the O.J. Simpson trial and all of that stuff. Basically, you have a genetic code. You get half from your mother, half from your father. Pretty basic. You know, so many of these, so many of that, put them together, here's what you got. People, you know, there's a woman who go to court and say, he fathered my child. The judge says, and does the DNA, and he says, yeah, it either is or it's not. You can do that with this. But there's a problem. To get clean DNA, first, if you looked at teeth, you got it. If I were to pull a hair out of my head and got the root DNA right here, you could swab the cells inside of my mouth and get it. Well, when you got something that's 200 AD, you know, that's gone, no hair, what do? Well, there's certain parts of the bone that you can get into and go for. They started doing this. It cost money out the whiz block. They found the mitochondrial DNA, which is the mother's DNA. There's 2 DNAs, mitochondrial, mother, nuclear, father. Okay? Now they got the legends. Supposed to be Native American Indian, Mayan, Toltec, whatever. God from sky, breed a kid. Let's see what we got. Well, they put all this money into doing the DNA. It took forever. Normally, there's a way of scraping bone down, breaking it down, crushing it up. You put it in this gel, it separates out and does its thing. The interesting thing is, and this is the latest DNA, it's taking 4 times as long to extract it from this because it's so much harder than ours. The first DNA came in and it was strange because unfortunately, Loyd was showing the skull around and everybody got to hold it and touch it and play with it. And I mean, when you held it in your hands, it just woke you up. It's like, what is this? Yeah, exactly. Oils in the hands and whatever else. All these people were playing with it and doing things and it soaked in. Well, they took it from a wrong area and it came out that it was European. And they're like, what? And then they realized what they did. So they had to go back and be redoing the DNA. And they're pulling it from, think of up inside of a skull, where hands can't reach it yet. And they're doing them. They also took the skull that was found with it. let's see who this is. Well, the fun part with who this is that it's not the star child's mother. It is a Mesoamerican female Indian of the time, but not his mother. So that goes back to the legends that say that the mother watched it, but it was entrusted to the care of what we would think of as a high priestess. Okay? And that if the child got to 5 and the god still hadn't come back, then the high priestess and the high priest would come in and start teaching the child stuff as well. But this is who was ultimately responsible. And if she screwed up, everybody got wiped out. So we do know that the body that was found with it is a Native American, Mesoamerican female Indian, but not the star child's mother. Okay. Now they started pulling the mitochondrial DNA on the star child. And they got one result which says that the mother, in fact, is a Mesoamerican. But because they didn't get enough alleles, when you see DNA, you make those little chains of colors and little squares and dots. The other group said, well, we're not sure if we've got enough of those, but we're pretty sure that the star child's mother was Mesoamerican, which would fit all the legends. Terrific, okay, great. They couldn't pull the nuclear DNA, the fathers. They were having a hell of a time with this. And they're in the case as of right now, because this costs money out of Israel, and they're trying to keep it pure. There is a project going on, and I will give you the address and the whole bit, of the Star Child, where they're asking for donations, because this is costing through the WISWAT. With the donation, they're asking, if you can do a donation of $100, even if it's a group, you will get a movie made in England. It's called An Evening with Lloyd Pye, that they filmed in England when he was over there, taking the Star Child through Europe, and then having the DNA pulled over there. And it's a 2.5-hour movie. Well done, extremely well done. Going back through history about Star Childs, gods from the sky, the whole schmear, and then 90 minutes solid on the Star Child itself. It's well worth your time. So if somebody wants to get in with one of those, great. Now they're in California. They are pulling the final DNA on the Star Child that they're trying to put together, and it's getting nutsier and nutsier. They had thought from the beginning that the Star Child was a male. Not so sure. Could be a female. They're having to pull more alleles, and that went as of this morning. What is this? It's like, and in fact I said, what? I talked to Loyd, and he said, the male that is human, the female, if it's a female child, it's harder to define. So that's where we're hoping it was a male. It looked like male DNA, but now we're not sure. So there's still questions. What the heck is going on? And who is the father of this child? And so far, what they've been able to pull is like nothing nobody knows. Now, if you come at it from a scientific point, from, say, my standpoint, you're like, what the heck is this? The mother's probably a Native American, but we don't know who the father was. And this is where they're asking for the donations to come in so they can make positive who it is. And if it comes out with what Loyd believes it's going to be, it'll pop the world wide open. Because they're going to say there's another source. And it's not of this earth. And nothing that we know. And this is rattling a lot of people's teeth. But if it doesn't bother me at all. Only makes more sense to me. I don't think that science and what you're believing in or religions, I think they all tie together. And my mind has been far more expanded since I've gotten into this. But it got even crazier because now we're going to have some fun. Now we're getting into my area. And I will bring up, I can pass these around and you'll be able to see these. And then please get them back up here because Michael will kill me. Now we're talking about, yeah.
Can I get one question before you? If this entity is, let's say a
Hybrid?
a hybrid or a more highly evolved entity than we are, I can understand the advantage of the larger brain, the skull tissue being stronger, the eyes being better. But what would be the advantage of the neck structure forcing the head to be looking down like that, in your opinion?
I don't know. And I bet that it's as honestly as I can tell you, and a lot of this, I don't know. And I say, what is the Star Child? I don't know. What are the gods of Cholula that I walked in on? I don't know. There have been some theories put out, and if you go to the Star Child site, starchildproject.com, you'll see what the theories are. And they're not just theories from, Joe Schmo that lives down the street. We're talking a nuclear physicist, we're talking one of the head, specialists in this area of medicine, that area of medicine, whatever else. The more you learn, the crazier it gets, the more questions there are.
I would imagine you're not too much of an expert in the more of the UFO or extraterrestrial lore and so forth.
No, I'm coming in through the back door in that Lloyd, Michael, I've read the Sitchin things and a bunch of the other stuff now because I want to familiarize myself with a different area because I'm finding questions I can't answer.
So that was just a presupposition before the question. My question is, if you know much about it, which some of us do, have your specialists ever considered the fact that maybe it's neither male or female, something in between?
No, in that they're able to pull the mitochondrial DNA. We can tell the sex. There is a sex to this child.
Oh, okay.
No, it is not a new, in between. There is a sex to this child or baby. And the age of the child, which we're going to get into with his, is a little bit older than what we thought. And they're doing some more research on it right now, and they're getting ready to hammer that one down. And keep an eye on this site because it's going to turn out to be very different. Now, I walk into a totally different thing, and this is what blew Loyd away, because I walk into the gods of Cholula. Cholula, Mexico, if you look at your little map over, in fact, I can pass this around so you get an idea of what's going on in the place. Cholula was and it is in classic Mayan time, 200 to 900 AD. Am I getting really boring to you, or is it starting to come together?
No.
All right, 200 to 900 AD up to 1100 AD is the classic period of Maya and Mesoamerica. This is their greatest, neatest, all the neat stuff started happening. But why? That's what we're going to get into. It gets even neater. In Cholula, the Pyramid of Tenampa, in Cholula, and there is a picture, and you'll see it over here. When you get to Cholula, you walk up and you think you're looking at a mountain. This big, overgrown, hairy, treesy mountain, and on top, it looks like a little church about this big. Okay? What's on top is a huge Catholic cathedral. It seems that when the Spanish came in, one of the main things that they did when they were trying to conquer Mesoamerica is they were like, oh my God, this is a bunch of heathens, we got to get rid of all of their stuff, and they burned, destroyed, looted, took all kinds of stuff. They took their gold, they took their silver, naturally, expect that. But what they did is when they brought their priests and whatever else in, this was heresy to them. They had books of heathen drawings of people doing weird things. And so what did they do? They burned them and destroyed them. Not all were destroyed. Okay? The codices, not all codices were destroyed, but the majority were. Well, they got nuts when they came into Cholula, because Cholula has the largest archaeological structure in our area of the world, and it's the Temple of Tenampa. You're familiar with the period of the sun and the moon in Mexico City, that huge, gigantic thing? This one makes it look stupid. This is way bigger. I mean, this is way bigger. But most of it's still overgrown, and what sits on the top, that little teeny, when you see the picture over here, you'll be able to see it. Looks like a little bitty building. It's this Gigundala Cathedral. I mean, this is massive. It is Gigundala. The second next one is in Yaxchilan, where I happened to go in while we were doing the excavation and stuff. But Cholula was the cultural, scientific, and everything else center of the world during that time, from 200 to 900 BC. Everything, forget Mexico City, forget Teotihuacan, forget all the other stuff. Cholula, for whatever reason, became the center that everybody came to. All the priests, everything gravitated to Cholula. Well, there was an interesting thing that happened in Cholula, and this is where I come in on it. You're familiar with pyramids, correct? Basically, I'm going to do it in a weird, and there's one on the far side. this understandable to you? Okay. It's not this type. Okay. Goes up in levels till you get to the top. All right. Think of this as the main entrance of a pyramid. This is the main steps. This is the way in. There's side doors and whatever else, but this is the main one. Okay? Always, always, when you find a pyramid, archaeologists know that there's going to be a burial here. Okay? Usually there's a slab and also some kind of steeling, which is an incised cut rock. It could be just a rock setting up there. It could be carved. It could be whatever. And usually sits right in the middle of this thing or something. They know to look there. I mean, a lot of times they want to get into the pyramids and creep around and see what's inside there because pyramids were built over pyramids over pyramids. Usually every 52 years, they built another layer around them, and it was a different type. Sometimes underneath was corbelled and they could be smooth. It depended who the natives were at the time. So you could find one pyramid and find 3 pyramids in there with space between the walls. You could creep around. And if you want to do that, go to Monte Alban. You can creep all over the place between them. It's amazing. But main entrance, burial site, steeling. Okay? Now, on all 4 sides of the pyramid, they set specific rules. And the rules said this, that here, front entrance, this one, the head honcho, the ruler, the head priest, the king, whatever you want to call him, the big guy, the head honcho, was buried here. That's what you would find if you dug under this spot. Okay? And each side of the pyramid had a spot just like this, reserved for a special reason and special people. Makes sense? Over here, if you're looking at the pyramid from the front to the right, this little treasure spot was reserved for the gods. Well, archaeologists learned, they're not going to dig over here. You know, they go digging down, oh, we're going to find a god. Well, there was never anything there. You know, who captured a god or caught a god or a god died and you buried him? You know, so they were like, leave that alone. You're always going into here to find out what's going on, this side and the back side, but very seldom. Well, a strange thing occurred. And it occurred in Cholula. And it's right here. I walked into it. Didn't know, it scared the bejeebies out of me because it was like, whoa. Because the oral legend was there, the glyph legend was there, and the codices legend was there. How many people have been to Mexico? Okay. I don't care, especially if you go in the outlying areas, not in the city. You can walk by a bush and go, and a little hand comes out with either artifacts or candy or whatever. I mean, you can't walk through the bushes without, the bushes are alive with people. It's like, you know, what's this? Oh, it's, you know, how much is that? What is it? They come out of the woodwork. And usually hordes of them. They're all over the place. If you go to Monte Alban, I climbed up to the top of this one pyramid that they had not done anything with. Well, and luckily it was a fortunate thing. I'm reading the glyphs as I'm going up and I'm up to the top, and it's all overgrown, and I hear, psst, say, and I'm like, no, and this little guy comes out of the bushes, you know, behind me, and I'm like, what's your back? You know, and now we're up there dickering. And the people down below are going, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, shut up, go away, I'm having a good time, go away. And he's dickering with things with me. I mean, you can't go to a spot in Mexico where they don't hawk a t-shirt. You know, it's like going to Vegas, Luxor, Excalibur, you know, Paris, whatever. Have you been to Vegas? You know, it's like a Vegas type thing on a different level. You can't go to a site that somebody is hawking something. You know, they're going to sell you beads, they're going to sell you dolls, they're going to sell you whatever it is, because the people are very poor and they need to make a few bucks, and it's the only way they can do it. From kids, little teeny kids, to little old people are coming up, Senora, and now you got to dicker with them too. Well, get strange. Here at Cholula, keep this in mind. If you've been there, I mean, you're going to hear, Senora, you know, got some goodies, like, okay. Here, a strange thing happened. On the right side of the pyramid, where they only reserved for the gods, appear 2 gods. There is a burial. They are unlike anything that has ever appeared anywhere else on the face of the earth, with the exception of the star trek. They are referred to as the gods of children. And I walked in here, and they're rather amazing. You've circulated that one. I'm going to circulate this one, but please try to keep the fingers off of here. When we come up here, there is a picture, and in fact, I'm going to pass this around too. You'll see the little build-up and the little stealing, what I'm talking about right here. But we got something even better that pops up here. There is a carving of a head. You're probably familiar with the Olmec heads, the great big, huge, gigantic heads, and I've got pictures of them right here. And I'm over 5'9", I'm standing flat-footed right now. And I don't come up to about here on these giant heads. We got an unusual little guy who's never appeared anywhere else in the world that we know of. And I want you to really look at this little guy. And then look at these skulls that come around. And as they come around, I'm going to tell you what happened and what these are. What they really are, I don't know.
Is that a complete skeleton?
This?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't find it with complete
Oh,
skeleton.
this is where it gets hairy. It gets nastier and nastier and hairier and hairier and scarier and scarier. Okay? Here are the two gods. One bigger, one littler. Same as the star child. Same skull formation, whole shot. The neatest thing about these little guys, though, is that they have teeth. They have full body, they have marrow. They are not like Mesoamericans, they're not like us. Most Mesoamericans were fairly small people. Toltecs were taller. I would be about the height of a really tall Toltec warrior. Most little Mayans and whatever else, were 5 foot tall people, little small short people. Remember this too, that they did not have facial hair. They did not have much body hair either. I mean, women didn't run around shaving their legs all the time and do all kinds of things. They didn't have it. Especially facial hair. No mustache, no beard, they didn't have to do stuff. Once in a while, somebody might have a little twink and they'd pull it out because it was unseemly. But men did not grow hair, as we think of men. If you look at this, which is the god, the Sarah rendering of the gods, and look at the skeletons, and start really looking at this, it might look familiar. I got things slagging. Yeah. It might look familiar to things that you are familiar with that I was not familiar with.
Where are those skeletons now?
Mexico, and I'm getting into that when you hear what happens, because Lloyd sent people down there. We wanted to pull the DNA from them, too. Okay? Now, it gets really crazy. Remember about the Senora? Okay? Here's where it gets nuts. Up come these little people. They are like, they're carried the same way. The head is carried this way. Their fingers are far more elongated than ours. They're about yay tall. Okay?
I mean, real live people.
These little guys.
Oh, not those. Okay.
No, the guys.
All right.
What they call the gods of Cholula are little people, which is even smaller than a 5-foot Mayan. Right at 5 feet. Smaller. Strange. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to pass these around. But be sure to look at this, because I'm going to be talking about it, and then look at these little guys. There is something, their body structure is different. Their rib cage is different. Their legs are different. Their fingers are different. Okay? But they're the same as each other. All right? These little guys are the same as each other. Notice 2 holes. One on the bigger of the skulls, right here, and on the smaller of the 2, there's one on the top, because I'm going to get into this. Now I'm going to give you the legend of these little guys, and I'm going to tell you what we found out. The legend comes down. Also, when you go to Cholula, these little guys are buried in, think of Cinderella's glass casket. When you see the pictures up here, they're in thick leaded glass with lead between them. They are like no other display you'll find anywhere else in the world. They are leaded in. So it's like looking into Cinderella's castle and seeing, Cinderella or Snow White laying there in her glass coffin. You will see actual excavations over here of the priest. The guy that was buried here, you're gonna find him right here. Normal, the two-head priest, normal bones, normal structure, normal everything. But son of a gun, who the heck is this? They're treated totally different. The people of the area revere the gods to this day. They will not make a copy of them. They will not make an image of them. They will not sell or hawk anything of them. They absolutely, I mean, normally they, oh wow. You couldn't buy a t-shirt, you couldn't buy representation, they won't even draw them. They shy away. And these people don't travel that far. They're not worldly people. I mean, even in Cholula, it's a large center, they don't go much beyond their town or their people. Their people have been there since classic and pre-classic times. And Charlie, they're not going to muck with the gods. They're not going to do anything like that. It's totally like and unlike anything else. They're not going to muck with them. All right, now it gets spooky. Up come these little people, and they're sent off to a forensic pathologist in Mexico City, as was the guy in Palenque. Okay? Strange occurrence happens. First, we're going to go to the legend. The legend says that the gods of Cholula came down from the skies. Now, it's in the glyph form, it's in the codices, it's in the oral tradition. No getting around it, all the same. They were gods. They came down from the sky. Whatever they came in wasn't fixable. And so they said that they would stay with the people and teach them. And they were, quote, quote, good gods. There's legends of bad gods, and there's legends of good gods. These are good gods. And they stay with the people. They also tell the people that their own people, their other gods or other people, will come and take them back, but it's going to take a while. And so they will live with them and teach them and help them. Well, during this time that this all dates back to is when this giant area of Cholula becomes the center of Mexico. And they have astronomy, and they have math, and they have medicine that we're just finding out about now. They have stuff we don't know about. They have math like unbelievable. They're being taught all kinds of stuff. Neat thing is they lived through almost four lifetimes. Now, the Mayan, and this happens in Palenque too, the Mayans' lifetime was about 20 to 22 years. You know, people had kids at 12 and 13 because you didn't make it much more. So an average 20, 22-year lifespan was an average lifespan for these people. So, you will also find this in Palenque. Yeah, Eric Von Donigan's Chariot of the Gods, the guy driving the spaceship down in the thing, he goes through four lifetimes too.
What do you mean goes through
He lives through a normal 4 times the lifetime of the people that live there. They lived there 20 years, so he lived with them 80 years. It's sort of like 20 years ago is 20 years, so this is what it breaks down to. All right, so they live and they teach. And they've always been taught all the way through. They're revered, it's peaceful, they're learning wonderful things. It is a nonviolent society. Arts flourish, wonderful things flourish. It's like the crowning glory. And then something really rotten happens. More gods come, but they're bad gods. And this is where it gets really weird. More gods come, but they're bad gods. And there is a war in heaven. Drop back to our biblical account of, you know, the archangels and Lucifer and the whole thing's going on, and you've got almost a dead on of Cholula. The gods fight. There is a war in heaven, and power and lightning and things unleashed like they've never seen. And unfortunately, the good gods are killed. Now, one is killed outright, and one is injured so badly, but survives for 3 days, and then dies. The bad guys take off. They don't even stay around. They're gone. So who they were, what they were, where they came from, I can't tell you. But the glyph writing, the codices, and the oral tradition all say the same thing.
Now, that should line up with the Brahma Hatra in India that records the wars of
I'm coming along, we're getting there. And what the heck happened? So they take these two gods and with full ceremony, they are buried. And if you think an Egyptian burial ceremony was something, theirs was almost right on. And it took as long. They didn't have mummification, but they did place them in certain positions and do special things and put things in with them. And it was always revered as the place of the gods. And if they wanted to intercede or have the gods intercede, people would come and pray at that place. And you didn't muck with that place. You didn't spit on that ground. You didn't throw a candy wrapper down there. I don't care what. That was the place of the gods. And woe unto you. Because they firmly believed that more good gods would come back. Now we're going to get stranger. You got the picture of the God's Cholula being passed around? The one with the hole here and the hole here? Well, the forensic pathologists in Mexico City got a hold of them, much like they did with the fellow from Palenque. And what they found out scared the living bejesus out of them, because they didn't have an answer for it. They didn't know what to do with it. It seems that the hole in the top of the little head was a natural, like, thump, like a bang, a bink, or whatever. This baby is a projectile. The best we can think of is a bullet. It had rifling. It went in, it went out.
In other words, that was shot.
With
Some kind of ballistic projectile.
You got it at 200 AD. There weren't guns in 200 AD. So it got a little nutty. And they thought, boom. So now they did another thing. They thought, well, we've got the answer to this. These guys were buried down here in the ground over there, right? And we got some yahoo out getting pulque, getting drunk out of his being, walking up, and instead of firing the gun in the air, we're shooting down into the ground. And it went through the head and blew out the other side, and that's what happened. Well, they did the testing. This was the death kill. This was the death shot. In 200 AD, shot him. This wasn't, a sling. I'm going to take down the giant. This wasn't David and Goliath. This wasn't a slingshot. The Mayan, Toltec, Olmec, whatever, did not have weapons like that at all. Their weaponry was fairly crude, that what we compare to now. They cut more people than they did anything else. They used obsidian, they used igneous rock. I mean, they cut people, they ripped hearts out. They did later on when the Toltecs came in. The heart ripping out didn't come in until way down the line. All right, now you got two gods. Their bodies aren't like ours. Their structure's different than ours. All legends come down the same way. They got killed because there was a fight in heaven and other bad gods came back. They were buried with everything. To this day, people won't go near it. And what the poop are they? We don't know. But their skulls and everything are the exact same as the storm shot. So, Lloyd thought, hot potatoes. We're going to send some people down there. They've got teeth. But, also, their teeth are not like our teeth. Another fun one. Where we've got 4 roots, they've got 3. Where we've got 1, they've got 2. Their jaws don't hook in like ours. If you're anywhere into medical areas or forensics, when you look at these, you're going to know that you're seeing something really different. And don't just look at the skulls. Don't just look up here. I mean, here they are again. I can pass this around too if you want to look again as the other one's going around. Look at the ribs. Look at the arms. Look at the femur. You're going to find some strange stuff. And people say, what are they? I don't know. The Mexican government locked them in, sealed them back. Lloyd sent people down to see, wouldn't it be great if we could extract this DNA and see if this DNA was anywhere near the Star Child DNA? Well, the first group of people that went down, the guy went down totally fucked up. He went down, and he went to the burial site over here that was from this one, and he saw the priest skulls and stuff, and said, nothing wrong. They're just plain old skulls, came back. And he was told, you flaming idiot, and went to the wrong side of the pyramid, didn't go all the way around. No, he went. So So that guy from Canada or wherever else was sort of, well, more people went down. Well, it seems something really strange has happened. It seems that the Mexican government, for whatever reason, have sealed off the gods. You can't catch them.
Now, closed access to them.
Closed.
Now, were the skeletons ever removed?
We know that they were taken out to have forensic stuff done with them and then brought back. And they kept them very much like a normal archaeological dig. We keep them in the original dirt and everything that they come in. And when you see them in the color, in the bigger photograph, you can see they're still kept. So the original stuff is still with them. What they did with them, we don't know. This area is, you can't get to, or it's sealed over. And whether the bodies and the skulls are still there, or whether they're in Mexico City, we don't know, and we can't get the information from the Mexican government. However, we do have some contacts with people down there, and we're trying to work to see what we can do. All we'd ask is for a small sample of DNA to find out what the poop these are. Will these be just little, everybody says, oh, well, in Mesoamerica they had dwarfs, and everybody's aware of that, little hunchback dwarfs. And little dwarfs were usually court jesters, or they could be very powerful people. And they could, but they're not dwarfs, and they do not have the shape, the bone structure, or anything of a dwarf or a little person. Different. And in fact, if you want to get into dwarfism, and if you really want to have a good, fun time, out in Chichen Itza, in the Yucatan, there is a pyramid of the dwarf, which has not been excavated as yet. There's a legend, and it comes down 3 ways that goes with him. And it's sort of like a Cinderella story. And it says, well, the king at the time, and I'm going to put it in modern terms, the king at the time had a beautiful daughter, but his power was waning because the Toltecs were starting to come in. The Toltecs were from up in the Mexico City area, warlike as hell. I mean, these were the bloodthirsty son of a guns. They were sort of like the Nazis of their time. The ones that ripped hearts out and did all kinds of god-awful things. And he needed to have people come in and strengthen his area. And so he set up this thing, according to all the legends, and he said, if anybody can build me a pyramid overnight, from dusk until dawn, and you can erect a pyramid, I will give you half of my lands, I'll give you my daughter to marry, and you'll rule as co-regent with me, and then we'll be able to fight off the Toltecs, because he figured anybody that could build a pyramid, overnight, had to have some kind of power. Well, but the catch was that if you said you'd do it and you didn't, you got axed. That was it, you were sacrificed. So a few people thought they could do it, it didn't work. And he had, like a court jester, but he was more of a magician and a jester at the same time. He had a lot of knowledge of verbs and powers. And he said, what about me, Your Highness? And the king's like, yeah, right. And he basically said, well, you want to try? And everybody laughed at him. And at dusk, the little guy disappeared, and at dawn, the pyramid was there. There was the pyramid. And he had to live up to his rule. He married the daughter of the king, and he ruled with what was the king, and had enough power and enough people together to fight off the Toltecs, and they left them the heck alone. Now, they haven't dug into the ruins of the pyramid of the dwarf or the wizard as yet, but I'm dying to see what they come up with from there. But there was another legend. Now we get more involved. This is where it gets fun. In Yaxchilan, also I came upon the stuff with the gods of Cholula were 1975, to give you a timeline and a date. Did you want to break
So
down?
wait, does anybody want to break? Because obviously this is fascinating, and I hate to stop her, but does anybody need a 5-minute break or anything, or do you want her to keep going?
Potty break, anybody needs to?
Take a break for 5 minutes and come back? Okay, let's take a quick break. You want to get these pictures up front first, or at least get them up this way so they're not moving around in the room while everybody's on around?